And if he is doing what I think he might be doing in Europe, to guarantee that he's able to go play 65 games this year.
And possibly make a playoff run.
And maybe make the playoffs and make a run with Luka and whatnot. As a fan, if I were a Laker fan, I support it. I support it 100%. I just would rather not be lied to. It just seems very weird to me that he all of a sudden has sciatica out of the blue that we've never heard of before, and we know everything about him because he's a public figure for so long. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, he's going to show up and play 40 minutes a game and look like he's 25 years old again.
When LeBron James was ruled out at the start of the season with sciatica, the reaction across the basketball world was immediate confusion, because this is not the kind of injury people associate with a player who invests millions into his body and has built a reputation as one of the most durable athletes in sports history. Sciatica is not some minor tweak you shake off overnight. It is nerve pain that runs from the lower back down the leg, something typically linked to aging bodies, chronic strain, or structural issues, not someone who just days earlier was dancing, training, and moving freely without any visible limitations. That disconnect is what triggered skepticism, and not just from critics looking for attention, but from fans, analysts, and even former players who started questioning how someone could go from looking completely healthy to suddenly being sidelined with a condition that usually develops over time. The timeline felt abrupt, almost too clean, and that is what fueled the conversation. Over the years, there has been a growing pattern in LeBron's career where absences tend to align with less critical parts of the season, followed by returns at moments when the stakes are higher, which naturally leads people to wonder whether what is being presented as injury is sometimes strategic rest under a different label. To be clear, load management is a real and widely accepted practice in today's NBA, especially for veteran players, but the difference is transparency. When teams openly rest players, it is understood as preservation. When injuries are announced without clear build-up or warning signs, it opens the door to doubt, especially when those players return looking refreshed and performing at elite levels almost immediately. Part of the issue here is credibility, because LeBron's own history has created a situation where people are more likely to question than simply accept. There have been moments in the past where injuries were revealed after the fact or framed in ways that did not fully align with what people later observed, and once that seed of doubt exists, every new situation gets viewed through that lens. It becomes less about the specific injury and more about the pattern surrounding it. That is why theories start to form, ranging from strategic rest to more speculative ideas about advanced treatments or recovery methods that are not widely discussed. Whether those theories are true or not is almost secondary to the fact that the circumstances make them believable enough for people to entertain. At the same time, this entire discussion exposes a deeper reality about modern sports that many fans are uncomfortable confronting. The line between recovery and enhancement has become increasingly blurred. Elite athletes now have access to cutting-edge medical technology, specialized therapies, and recovery systems that go far beyond traditional training and rehabilitation. From cryotherapy to hyperbaric chambers to personalized treatment plans that cost more than most people will ever spend on healthcare in a lifetime, the goal is to extend performance beyond what used to be considered normal limits. So when a player like LeBron, who openly invests heavily in maintaining his body, suddenly misses time and then returns performing at a high level, it raises questions not just about him, but about the entire system. Where does legitimate recovery end and competitive advantage begin? And do fans actually want a clear answer to that question? The truth is, probably not. There is a certain comfort in believing that greatness is purely the result of talent, discipline, and hard work, even when evidence suggests that modern performance is supported by far more complex systems behind the scenes. That is why situations like this create tension. On one hand, people admire the longevity, the ability to defy aging, and the continued dominance. On the other hand, they question how it is being sustained and whether everything is as straightforward as it appears. The timing of the absence only adds to that tension, because missing early season games that carry less weight while returning for more meaningful stretches fits a pattern that looks intentional, whether it actually is or not. And because LeBron is one of the most documented athletes ever, someone whose routines, workouts, and physical condition are constantly visible, any sudden or unexplained change stands out even more. Sciatica is not typically something that appears overnight without warning, which is why the lack of build-up raised eyebrows. Still, none of this provides definitive proof of anything beyond speculation. What it does show is how perception shapes reality in sports. Once a narrative of strategic management or selective transparency takes hold, every new situation is interpreted through that lens. The result is a cycle where even legitimate injuries are questioned, and every recovery is analyzed for hidden meaning. Ultimately, this is bigger than one player or one diagnosis. It reflects the evolving nature of professional sports, where performance, health, and longevity are influenced by resources and methods that blur traditional boundaries. LeBron James remains one of the greatest players ever, and nothing about this discussion changes that, but greatness also brings scrutiny, especially when circumstances do not fully align with expectations. Whether the skepticism is justified or not, it highlights a broader conversation about transparency, fairness, and how much fans really want to know about what goes into sustaining elite performance at the highest level. Let's really break down the timing here, because it is almost too perfect to be coincidental. The injury was announced right before the regular season began, and the recovery timeline was set at 3 to 4 weeks, which conveniently means LeBron misses the least important stretch of the year, those early November games against teams that probably will not matter once the playoffs arrive, but then comes back before things start getting serious. That is exactly why people are looking at this situation sideways. It just feels strange that he all of a sudden has sciatica out of nowhere, something we have never really heard being an issue for him before, especially when this is one of the most documented athletes in human history and we know about nearly every tweak, every strain, every minor ailment because he shares so much of his training and recovery routine on social media. So when a major condition like sciatica, which does not usually just appear overnight without any build-up or warning signs, suddenly shows up with no clear lead-up, that naturally raises suspicion. Sciatica typically develops over time, usually as a result of chronic issues, herniated discs, or degenerative conditions, and you do not just wake up one morning with it out of nowhere unless, of course, you need a medical excuse that sounds credible enough to justify a 3-week absence. And when you zoom out, the pattern gets even more interesting. For most of his career, LeBron was genuinely an Iron Man, playing 70-plus games almost every season, logging heavy minutes, and showing up when it mattered. But as he has moved into his late 30s and now his 40s, there has been a noticeable shift. More games missed, more mysterious ailments, more strategic absences. Is that partly just aging? Of course it is. Nobody expects a 40-year-old to play 82 games anymore. But the specific nature of these absences, the timing, the diagnosis, and the almost miraculous recoveries are what fuel the conspiracy theories. When you come back from a supposedly debilitating injury looking better than you did before you got hurt, people are going to ask questions. When you miss the least meaningful games but somehow always seem ready for nationally televised matchups and playoff battles, people notice the pattern. And that is the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. Do we even want full transparency about what elite athletes do to maintain their performance? The honest answer is probably no. We want the sausage, but we do not want to see how it is made. We celebrate players who push the boundaries of human performance, we marvel at recovery times that look impossible, and we worship athletes who defy aging in ways previous generations never could. But at the same time we want to keep enough plausible deniability to believe it is all just hard work, genetics, and clean living. The reality is probably somewhere in between. LeBron James is one of the greatest basketball players to ever live, and that is not up for debate, but greatness does not exempt you from scrutiny, especially when the circumstances around your absences seem designed to raise eyebrows. The conspiracy theory might be wrong, but it is not baseless. There is enough smoke here for people to ask where the fire is, and in an era where sports are more managed and manufactured than ever, maybe a little healthy skepticism is not the worst thing in the world. Maybe we should be asking these questions instead of just accepting every injury report at face value. Because at the end of the day, this is not just about one player and one injury. It is about the future of professional sports, the ethics of performance enhancement, and how much we are willing to overlook in the name of entertainment. The LeBron sciatica situation might look like a small controversy on the surface, but it is really a window into much bigger conversations the sports world needs to have, and those conversations are only just beginning.